You seem hungry. Good thing your table is ready with Saturday Omaha.
Saturday Omaha.
Eat this. Hello and welcome to our show today. This is a very different Saturday Omaha episode, but then again, we like to keep changing it up. Think about this as a rotating special with maybe more to come. A while back, we talked with Matt Frampton of Urban Slicer Pizza. I talked to him and asked if maybe he would teach me how to make pizza. So, well, I'm bringing this education that I received to you. This conversation and event, along with reading after the fact here, Ken Forkich's The Elements of Pizza, really have catapulted my journey into making pizza and being able to handle dough and cooking and nomenclature, all these things. So I'm hopeful that you will take away from this conversation the education that I received as well, and maybe this will inspire you to make some pizza for yourself at home. Now, Matt is using many things that Urban Slicer has available, but we talk about through this as well how you can do that if you're not using an Urban Slicer product, right? These are techniques and things that are useful to anyone making pizza. Also, just kind of a time update, if you will. There's some mention of a gluten-free dough in here, and that is something that actually is available now, so we'll keep it current. I really hope you enjoy this. It's going to be a two-parter. The first one, we're going to talk about dough, mixing dough, yeast, and those things, and we're actually going to have a second part that is cooking the pizza. So let's go.
Let's make some pizza, man. So first of all, thank you. So we've got a combo here. We've got Urban Slicer with Matt Frampton. We've got Dave Zorko with Saturday Omaha. And we did an episode a while back and talked about Urban Slicer and things.
We sure did.
I hit you up because I really wanted to learn how to make some pizza and hopefully teach some other people how to make some pizza. We are in uncharted Saturday pizza waters as we are going to talk about, make, cook, consume pizza in the audio medium. So I will try to ask a lot of questions for everyone so that as I learn, hopefully everybody else can learn. So Matt, what are we doing today, man?
Yeah, well, I think the Q&A thing will be pretty important, also in uncharted territory here myself.
Nice.
Have never done an audio pizza class, but
perfect.
It's going to be a blast.
Yeah.
So I've prepared some dough in advance.
Okay.
And I know we talked a little bit about this, but so we're going to do Neapolitan.
Awesome.
We're going to do like a Neapolitan, which is sort of a cross between Neapolitan and New York. So a little more firm, stands up a little bit more than your traditional Neapolitan.
Yeah.
We're going to do Detroit
awesome.
Style deep dish.
Nice deep dish pizza.
Yeah, with that caramelized crust around the edge.
Yes.
And we're going to do a Sicilian pizza.
Perfect.
We're going to mix it up. I've got a menu over here.
Yeah.
Your listeners can't see it, but we're going to do a buffalo chicken bacon ranch. We're going to do what I call, and we're doing that on the Neo.
Cool.
We're going to do an 8 Mile pie, which is a traditional Detroit deep dish. Pepperoni sausage. We'll finish with a little hot honey. We're going to do the hangover, which is my take on a breakfast pizza.
Love it.
The Don Framtonio, which we'll do on the Sicilian, and that's like sort of traditional Italian, classic Italian ingredients. The Au Jus Kidney, which we'll do on in a long pan, which is a different style of deep dish.
Wow. It almost looks like it's a little bit longer and a little bit wider if you were to buy a box of lasagna noodles. It's like 1.5 lasagna noodles wide and 1.5 long, and then your other pan here looks like, what is that, like a 6x8
so that's
or something?
An 8x10.
8x10,
yeah,
okay.
Sort of standard for Detroit style is 8x10 is a small.
Right.
10x14 is a large.
Right.
And what makes this unique to Detroit is the shape of the pan.
Yeah, it's trapezoidal sides in nature.
That's
They're graduated.
exactly right. Yeah, so they were blue steel pans that came off the automotive assembly lines.
Right, right.
They held nuts and bolts. And a place called Buddy's in Detroit procured the pans from the automotive line and turned them into pizza pans. They were blue steel. This is actually a steel pan with a coating on it made by a company called Lloyd Pans. They're sort of the next generation leader in the Detroit style pan. But that trapezoidal shape that you just described allows the cheese to melt down around the edge.
And get that crispy caramelized cheese that a Detroit style needs.
That's exactly right. And the long pan has the same design to it. But what's cool about these is you can cut it into strips, so they make like really cool appetizers.
Oh, right on.
So I've become a pretty big fan of those. And there's all kinds of shapes and sizes. These are the two that we're going to run today.
I want to set the stage a little bit too, because so we're going to move throughout Matt's house as we do things here, because you teach classes and things at your house. And I walked in into the backyard, and you have like the Disneyland like pizza barbecue area with several ovens happening there. And right now we're in the lower kitchen, and he does indeed have a large whiteboard menu set up with all those pizzas he just described. So the buffalo chicken, the 8 Mile, the Hangover, the Don Framptonio, which I love, Are You Kidding Me, and the Bravo Ragazzo.
Yep, that's right. Yeah.
Awesome.
So this Are You Kidding Me is a French dip pizza.
Oh, cool.
And then the Bravo Ragazzo, we're going to make a Italian sandwich.
Oh, cool.
Out of Neapolitan, what I call my crack bread. So like a garlic bread. We're going to turn a pizza into a sandwich.
You said to come hungry, and that's a whole lot of pizza.
Yep, I got boxes to go, so you'll be able to take some home.
So if the home cook is just starting out doing this, so we mentioned a couple of different styles of pans. So if you need to do different styles of pizza, you may want to think about different styles of pan just because of how it needs to cook. In Omaha, are there local spots where people can get pans, or is this mostly something that you might have to order off the internet somewhere? Or?
You can get the standard size Detroit pans. Helping You Barbecue actually carries them.
Oh, okay.
So you can buy the pans there.
Great.
They're also 2-day shipping on Amazon.
Okay.
And then direct from LloydPans.com.
Got you. Okay.
There
cool.
are some competitors out there, but there's not a ton of them.
Yeah.
And the Lloyd pans, I've had a couple of them for like 8 years, and they're still in brand new shape. And I use them a lot.
Fantastic.
So so I'd recommend the 8x10 to start with.
Okay.
I think that's a good one to start with, and then you might want a round one. Our Sicilian is going to be done in a thinner. This is going to end up being like a Sicilian kind of grandma, a little bit thinner version of a Sicilian, but this is a rectangular pan. Yeah,
it almost looks like a small cafeteria food tray, but metal, that same height and shape, I guess, there. So
so we'll be doing those different styles. Some of it will be stretching by hand, and we'll be launching right onto a deck or a stone.
Yeah.
All of the pan pizzas, I do what's called par baking, which is a partial bake.
Okay.
We'll bake the crusts before we put any toppings on.
Awesome.
And that gets them to set up a little bit. They stay a little crispier. It's almost like a fried dough when you do it that way.
And I should add too, so as we sit here at a very nice wood plank table with these 3 different pans, 3 different doughs that you had prepped beforehand, I believe that you said you like the dough to kind of sit and ferment, or I'll let you describe the process, but for about 48 hours typically before you actually use it.
Yeah, so I'm using all urban slicer mixes right out of the bag.
Okay.
I mean, they can technically be done same day.
Sure.
They're perfectly fine that way.
Gotcha.
I prefer to age my dough. It's called a cold ferment. The process, there's a couple little differences when you're going to make it same day versus cold ferment it.
Okay.
When you make it same day, we're mixing it just like the instructions say with warm water. We want it to light up real quick and start rising as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
In order for that to happen, we need water to rehydrate the yeast.
Sure.
And we need heat for the yeast to come alive.
Got you.
And then the yeast eats the carbohydrates in the flour, and if there's any other food in there, like sugars. And then the byproduct of that process is a gas, and that's why the dough rises.
Right. Carbon dioxide, right, is what
that's
they
exactly
give
right.
off? Awesome.
Yep, that's exactly right. When you cold ferment, I use a cold water when I'm mixing, so it doesn't start rising very quickly.
Okay.
I ball it up and I get it into the fridge as quick as I can.
Yeah.
When I teach, I tell people 24 hours is good, 48 hours is better, 72 hours is best.
Awesome.
In our case, I fermented for 48 hours. It starts to become more difficult to taste the difference after 72 hours.
So there's a point of diminishing returns there if you let it go too long.
Yeah, and I've done up to 14 days.
Wow.
Wouldn't recommend it. It got really weird.
Fair enough.
It does take on different characteristics as that time goes on.
Gotcha. Does it taste more yeasty?
The best way to describe it is it gets more sourdoughy.
Okay.
So you get a little bit better chew.
Okay.
Also, when it goes through a longer fermentation process, the yeast does a better job of being healthy.
Okay.
And so it's more digestible. You actually feel better after you eat pizza that's had a dough that's been aged.
Interesting.
That's a big difference between a low-priced chain and a high-quality place. And every pizzeria, I respect them, even the chains, because they're all locally owned. But that's kind of the difference in a crust from like a Little Caesars versus maybe like a Virtuoso, which is local here in Omaha, or Dante. They age their dough as well.
So much like a sometimes a good restaurant steak is dry aged or whatever.
Yep.
A little more time put into it, a little more care. Same with your dough. And I think the other cool part is like, having made like the urban slicer Neapolitan style, I think it's got like a 4-hour resting time or something along those lines. Like if you need to make a pizza dough the same day, that's good. But what I like about this too is not only are you getting the digestive benefits, a little different flavor, but you could prep, clean up, put the dough away, and then just make the pizza, cook the pizza the day you're ready for it, which is super cool.
That's exactly right. And these ones that we're going to partially bake, you can do that 3-4 days in advance and just hold them like you would a loaf of bread.
Awesome.
And so then they're already set up, and you just throw toppings on them, and you can put them in your oven. And
brilliant.
When people are having parties, I recommend doing something like this. Then your crusts are ready to go, and makes it super easy for a party.
And so we'll talk a little bit more as we go through, but for those that haven't been introduced to you yet, so you are a certified pizzaiolo, right?
Correct.
Is Tony Gimignani? Is that?
Yeah, Tony Gimignani.
Gimignani. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. He was the first the first person to be accredited to teach the International School of Pizza curriculum in the States.
Awesome.
He's the only one in the States that does the full suite of pizza style. So it goes beyond the traditional Neapolitan style. He teaches all the American styles, and he's traveled the country and the world to learn all these. So
cool.
It was a awesome experience. And as it turns out, I was the second to last class that he's ever going to do. He just discontinued.
Oh my gosh.
And he's pivoting in his career to franchising of pizzerias, and he's closing his school. So
oh my goodness. So you and David Lasole, because Lasole also did that as well. So we have two pizzaiolos here in Omaha, which is awesome.
Yeah. David and I have that in common. It's been pretty cool to connect with him on that.
Very cool. All right. So what happens now?
Well, what I'd like to do, we're going to let these crusts continue to rise a little bit, and we can talk about the timing and everything, but I'd like to show you how to mix up a batch.
Yeah.
We'll be using the dough that I fermented to cook today, but I want to mix up a batch, let you feel and hear from me what I think it should feel like.
Great.
It's much like when you cook a brisket or something. The temperature is important, but when you stick your thermometer in there, it's the resistance, right? And you're looking for the tenderness, and there's a tenderness to dough before it rises that I'm looking for.
Yeah.
We'll walk through that process.
I love it because it's a living, breathing thing, literally. So
that's
very
correct.
Cool. All right.
Yep. One more point on time while we're switching rooms too. And just because, we talk a lot of barbecue too, and I think we might get into that a bit today.
I'm with it.
Much like smoke is a flavor in barbecue, thyme is a flavor in dough making. So you can't really replicate that synthetically in any other way other than just to give it time. Or like fermenting beer or wine, and alcohol, it just takes time. So
that care and love really does come out on the plate when you're done.
Yep, that's exactly right.
That's fantastic.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Let's go
to the mixing room?
To the mixing room.
Okay, let's go.
And we went to the prep room. This is a back area that Matt has away from the kitchen, away from the cooking area for dough prep, mixing, etc., with all sorts of cool tools and things like that for the budding, or in his case, professional pizzaiolo. He also has a real nice KitchenAid mixer, which is where we're going to pick it up.
And then I've got a KitchenAid commercial mixer here. I've got one upstairs as well. So that just stays down here. I don't have to move it around, and it's great for home use. It says commercial on it, but it's got a stronger motor. So when you're doing pizza dough, and we'll get into the hydration of things, but the lower your hydration, the tougher the dough, and that's harder on the motor.
Oh, gotcha.
And so when you get a mixer and you choose to buy a mixer, looking at what that motor can handle, they may even actually say, we can do this many dough balls at this weight as long as it's
hydration X. Oh, interesting. Otherwise, it's too taxing on the mixer.
Yeah, correct.
And you can mix by hand, but there's a lot of effort then that goes into that. So if somebody's just starting out and doesn't have a KitchenAid, it can be done by hand, but you're going to put a little forearm work into that then, right?
Yeah, mixing just a couple dough balls by hand isn't bad. I do it a lot.
Awesome.
If I'm just making 2 pizzas, I actually prefer to just do it by hand. There is some science to getting your hands into the dough. It can bring on different tastes and characteristics and things like that. So yeah. It just depends on how much you're doing.
Great. So for our equipment to make this, to kind of set the stage for everyone here, so we got our KitchenAid mixer we just talked about, or whichever mixer you choose. We've got a dough hook. We've got a container of yeast. We've got some, in this case, the Urban Slicer Neapolitan style dough is what's on deck right now. Mm-hmm. Measuring cup, scale, and looks like maybe some bench flour right there.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Some AP flour.
Yep, okay. And the only reason I have this yeast here is what I wanted to do is just show you a trick to kind of give it a turbo boost.
Yeah.
There's yeast in our bags, but yeast is a living creature. It's impacted by environment, so we have had, some times where it's sat on a truck in delivery and it was too hot out, or, so it is a living thing, and its environment is important. So there's already yeast in our mix, but if you add a little bit, I'm going to add about a teaspoon per bag. Okay. It'll turbocharge it, and by the time we're done today, we should see some pretty big dough balls just in 2 hours.
Oh my goodness. There's quick rising yeast, mm-hmm. right? And then, so what type of yeast do you have in the container there?
This is an instant yeast.
Instant yeast,
yeah.
Okay.
So there's active dry yeast and there's instant yeast. Both work. Mm-hmm. Active dry yeast technically should be rehydrated in water before you use it for just a little while.
Okay.
It performs much better.
Gotcha.
As soon as salts and sugars come into contact with it, if it hasn't been rehydrated, it can break down some of the molecular structure of the yeast. Uh-huh. So instant yeast is a little bit finer and not as finicky, and it is intended to be mixed right away with all the other ingredients. So we use instant yeast in our Neapolitan style, all 3 of our blends actually, and that's what we're going to add to this today as well.
Hey, we're going to talk a little bit about weights and measures here. Some good advice. Make sure you have yourself a digital scale for weighing your water, which is going to be more accurate than by volume. Also, when you're making dough from scratch, if you are just using flour and water and yeast and a little bit of salt, you're going to need to weigh those things as well. And you might need a larger digital scale depending on your recipe. Some recipes I've encountered use a very small amount of yeast, and you might actually need a scale that goes way, way down into fractions of a whole gram. But for the most part, I would think a standard digital scale should get you through most things, and it'll be more accurate because if you're measuring out flour, it depends on how packed the flour is and those type of things. So also, many of the recipes that I've been cooking at home lately start with about 500 grams of flour, and then the water is adjusted for hydration levels. So something like 350 grams of water to 500 grams of flour puts us at a 70% hydration level. So the amount of water per total amount of flour is how that works. So there are recipes out there, etc. Again, we're using the Urban Slicer product here, so when you say by the bag or those things, those are pertaining to the Urban Slicer dough. And if you're making this from scratch, measuring your flour and water, etc., well, you need to follow that recipe to keep those hydration levels going, or maybe experiment with your hydration levels. Anyway, here we go.
We're going to mix up 2 packages. Depending on the size of your mixer, 1 package can actually be not difficult to mix, but the dough hook can struggle to reach all the way down in there.
Gotcha.
So that's why I like to do it by hand. And with this larger mixer, you just need a little more volume in here for the dough hook to
otherwise it's not going to hit anything. So if for some reason someone isn't using Urban Slicer mixture, so we have about, what have we got, 27 ounces of mix, which in this case is flour and all the other ingredients in there. So almost not quite 2 pounds-ish of ingredient in the bowl. So,
yep, that's right. And we're going to add 2 cups of water to this or so. I'm going to show you some tricks to slowly add it.
Yeah.
When we fill our bags, we try to get them precisionally filled, but there's a little plus minus in there.
Okay.
And I like my dough to be, I'm pretty particular about the hydration.
Sure.
So 1 cup of water to a perfectly filled bag is about 63% hydration.
Okay, so help me out here, because I've been very curious about hydration. So to kind of break that down for the non-pizzaiolo, how is hydration calculated? Like, how does that happen?
So in very simple terms, let's just say you have 100 grams of flour.
100 grams of flour.
If we want 60% hydration, 60 grams of water.
Okay, so pretty straightforward. Then it's your flour to water ratio, and then calculated as a percent.
Yeah, there are some nuances with the rest of your ingredients, but it's trivial. So just for simple math, and that's sort of the general way to look at it.
So if we were in physics class, so if there's sugar and things in there, this is almost like neglecting wind resistance.
Yeah.
Like we're just measuring flour more. Okay, got it.
That's exactly right.
Okay, okay.
And you can do things like use a mother dough or a starter.
Okay.
Like a sourdough starter.
Yeah.
And you have to factor that into your calculation as well, because there's water and flour in that.
Sure.
And if you want, towards the tail end of today, we can talk a lot about starter. And
Perfect.
Okay, so what we are going to do is we're going to measure out 2 cups. I'm going to use a scale.
Okay.
That's just the way I've always done it. 1 cup of water is 236 grams.
Okay.
That's 472 grams if we do 2 cups.
And so we've got our measuring cup on the scale as you are filling. So the scale set to grams, so we can watch it go up just like filling your gas tank. And then I should ask on your water, is this tap water, distilled? What type of water do we have here?
Great question. So I prefer to use filtered water. I pull it from my fridge because I can trust it.
Okay.
But you ideally want to avoid really, really soft water.
Okay.
So if your water softener is really concentrated, it can make the dough soft and flimsy.
Oh, okay.
You want to try to avoid really, really hard water. It does the exact opposite. It can make the dough tough and hard to stretch.
Okay.
Any additives to water, those are bad news because the yeast needs to thrive in this environment. I prefer, like when I'm traveling and doing a class, I buy bottled water.
Gotcha.
Filtered water.
Right.
And never use it from the tap.
Yeah, because our Omaha water's pretty good and pretty tasty, but there's, fluoride or chlorine or whatever's in there, minerals. So if you get something that's filtered, you're avoiding any potential dough problems.
That's exactly right. Or, impacting the yeast so then the dough doesn't rise or something like that.
Oh, which would be super frustrating.
Yeah. And so we get a lot of questions from users, and most times we point them to the water as the root cause.
Sure.
I just recommend filtered water. We're going to take a temperature of this water.
Okay.
When I'm doing same day dough, which we're going to do for this, I want that water to be 75 to 80 degrees. So we're at 52
so we're actually
right
a little cool right now.
Yep. So we're going to take this over to my microwave and just nuke it for 15 seconds until we get to the temperature we want.
All right.
It was pulled cold from my fridge, and I've got it in my little Grizzly container here. So let's walk over there and get this water up to temp.
And heat up to temp we will. An equipment note, a digital thermometer proves very, very helpful so that you can see the temperature of the water. And a Ken Forkish note, quote, water gets pretty hot to the touch around 105, so you definitely don't want to be up in that range. Just in case you don't have a digital thermometer, you can use to the touch. Please be careful if that's the case. Also, I love this move from Matt on heating up water just a little bit at a time in the microwave. That's proved very helpful. Just zap it for just a few seconds, maybe give it a little stir, and then check its temperature so that you know where that water is at before you proceed with your mixing process. So there we go. Let's get back to it.
You can obviously heat this up a number of ways, but the microwave is the easiest way to do it. We're just going to hit a minute here, but I'm going to stop it every 15 seconds.
Okay.
And I'm using a thermopen. Just a quick read thermometer makes this process a lot easier.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're almost heating like we're melting chocolate, just a little bit at a time, so we make sure we don't, because if we boil it, we could kill the yeast, right, if it's too hot.
That's exactly right. You can go up to 100 degrees. 115 degrees, yeast will start to die.
Oh, okay.
And so when people pull what they think is warm tap water, if it feels warm, remember your body is 98.6, so it could technically be, upwards of 110 115 degrees.
Right, yeah, because your water heater is probably cranking up to at least 120 or something.
Yeah, 130, something like that.
Still staying hot by the time it moves through all the pipes. And so we just did about 15 seconds, went up about 10 degrees or so we're going a little bit longer here.
Yep. We're just going to keep going until we get to 75 to 80. I don't like going above 80 myself, and the reason is my favorite temperature. There we go. So we're at
80.
Yeah, we went up. Well, if I get deeper, so on the surface,
looks like we're normalizing to right around 70-ish, depending on where we are.
Yep. So that was 45 total seconds for 2 cups of water that started at 54 degrees.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But we took a little break each 15 seconds, so it's just worth monitoring, and we're good with that. Ideal dough when it starts to rise, maybe in the 80 to 85 degree range.
Okay.
If you're cold fermenting, I like to have that dough around 65.
Around 65. Okay, yes. Otherwise you're going to get a warm ferment because your water is hot. So.
Yeah, exactly. So if I were going to take this dough and age it, I would have been fine with the 54 degree water.
Got you. Okay.
Because I don't want it to light up. I don't want it to start fermenting too quickly.
Yeah.
In this case, we're using a little bit warmer, and then we're going to get some heat off of the mixer from friction.
Oh, just friction from the bowl and the dough hook and all those things?
Yep,
okay.
That's exactly right. So I'm going to take about 2 teaspoons of yeast.
All right, yeast in the bowl.
Yep, and just kind of whisk that quick.
And so right now we've just got the flour and the yeast in the bowl, giving a quick stir with just a tablespoon before we do any mixing. Perfect.
And we're going to put the bowl in our mixer. This particular one locks in place.
Oh, that's pretty slick.
Yep, and then we attach the dough hook. With these mixers, they come with like
a big whisk attachment there.
Yep, a big whisk attachment and a paddle attachment.
Okay.
The dough hook's what you want to use for standard pizza dough.
Okay.
If you're doing like a gluten-free or a keto style, the paddle's really nice.
Really? Okay.
Because it's more of a frosting-like texture.
Oh.
So it'll whip it.
Got
and get you some more air in there. So I do like having this tool, but for regular pizza dough, dough hook's where it's at.
That's a good tip if you're doing that gluten-free, though, to use the paddle attachment instead. That's awesome. Okay.
Yep. We'll have a gluten-free after the new year, actually.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you said you were working on that when we had talked last.
Yeah, and it's just taking some time. I'm on like revision 7, but
because you want a good pizza when it finally comes out. Yeah.
Yep, it's all approved, and we'll have the paddle as part of our instructions.
Awesome.
All right, so I'm going to raise the bowl up.
Okay.
I'm turning the mixer on 2.
Okay, and we haven't added any liquid yet, so you're letting the dough hook go and just the dry ingredients, right?
Yep, just the dry ingredients. The dough hook is going. I'm going to take the water. I'm not going to put all the water in.
Okay.
So I think you mentioned at one point you made a batch and it was a little sticky.
A little sticky, yep.
Yeah, so what I recommend is leave out a little bit.
Okay.
Reserve it, and we'll slowly add it in until we have the tackiness that I would recommend.
Gotcha. So there is a little bit because the humidity in this room or the flour, everything can affect things. So measure out how much water you think you need.
Yep.
We're going to start adding, but we're not going to just dump it all in there because we might not need it all.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Yeah. You can add it all. If it gets too sticky, what we would do is we would take some of this bench flour and we'd add some of that. So we're basically doing the opposite of what we're doing, is adding bench flour to compensate for it being too high of a hydration, too much water.
Gotcha.
I just like doing it this way, and you're right. Humidity in a room, the temperature outside, all those things impact it. There's a slight variation in our bags.
Right.
So if it was on the minus side, then the 1 cup of water is maybe a little bit too much.
Gotcha.
And if you do have a little bit of softer water, that can also make
mineral content or all these things in your water. That's true. That's true.
It's a pretty specific science. So,
and if somebody's using or making dough from scratch and using their own flours, do you recommend using like a 00 or AP flour, or just kind of depends
if you're
on what
making
you're doing?
from scratch, I don't recommend an all-purpose flour.
Don't use an AP flour.
But it just depends. Not all 00s are created equal. Not all bread flours are created equal. 00, it's great, but that's the mill.
The size,
That's the
not
size.
necessarily the content.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's, after we mix this up, let's talk in a little more detail about what the different sizes are and what the difference between that and gluten, all-purpose, bread flour. Let's cover that when we're done with this, and I think I'll help you understand that.
All right.
So we're still just mixing the dry ingredients here. We let the mixer go. That's not necessary, but we got to chatting. So now I'm just going to start slowly adding the water.
Kind of drizzling it in there.
Just drizzling it in here. I'm going to probably reserve 2 to 3 tablespoons tops. I mean, I want most of this water in there. And in fact, I'm a big fan of cramming as much water as we possibly can into pizza dough, because the more hydration we get in there, depending on the style, the better chew we're going to get. So I'm going to reserve about that much.
And you just stayed on one side of the bowl basically. Right now, the center of the bowl, as our dough hook is moving around, was fairly wet, kind of a well in the middle. And right now you're using, looks like a silicone spatula there to kind of poke the flour on the sides down to get in the middle.
Yep, that's exactly right. When we let it run there for a minute, we kind of created a well.
Oh, because we're chit-chatting?
Yeah. So normally I wouldn't need to use this, but with a smaller batch, you would. For what I just described a few minutes ago, with a bigger bowl like this, the dough hook just doesn't have as much volume to grab onto.
Got it. Oh, you can smell everything coming together. You got that good bready, floury smell as things are mixing up and our dough ball's starting to form.
Yeah, so we've got about a 1/4 cup reserved here. I can see that it's probably going to be a little dry, so I'm just going to slowly add a little bit more.
And so as we've been mixing here, there's still a little bit of powder, a little bit of flour there as things are starting to move, but it seems like it is tightening up there.
Yeah, and I think this will mix up pretty nicely. We're going to let it form a ball, and then we're going to feel it.
Awesome.
And so I'm going to hit a timer.
Okay.
So now that we've got what I think is all the water we want in there, I'm going to hit a timer, and we're going to go 5 minutes. And 4 to 5 minutes is good. I prefer 5.
Are we developing gluten right now? Is that what's happening?
So right now, a couple things are happening. First of all, since we slowly added the water, the flour is absorbing the water. The yeast is absorbing the water. And we're going through, the mixer is kneading the dough, so it's breaking down the gluten. And gluten's a protein in flour. And as that gluten breaks down, it forms a web, and the yeast eats the carbohydrates. The yeast basically passes gas,
right?
And that gas gets trapped in that gluten web. So as we were talking about flours, a very low gluten flour is going to be a weaker dough, less structure, not able to hold the air as much as a higher gluten dough. Our Neapolitan is the highest gluten dough mix that we have. It's about 14%, right around there. So very, very high. Flours you can buy range from like 8.5%, all the way up to like 16%. That's kind of the range you can find out.
And sorry, that was protein?
That's gluten. Yeah, gluten is a protein, so yeah, that's the gluten percentage in the in the mix.
So our dough ball has now pulled all of the dry ingredients off of the bowl.
Yep, and we're going to hit stop just for a second.
Okay.
Right now is when I want to feel, okay, how does this feel? And go ahead.
Yeah.
So it should be tacky, not sticky.
It is tacky, and I barely have any stuck to my fingers at all, just a little tiny bit.
Yep, and we're going to let this keep mixing, and we'll see how it sets up. We may want a little more water, but I think we're going to be good. So also optional, at the 5 minute mark, we're going to add a fat. And the fat we're going to choose is olive oil.
Good choice.
Yep. And it's not mandatory, but I like the fat for a little extra elasticity, some pliability, flavor.
And what type of do we have? Just straight olive oil, extra virgin?
It is extra virgin, but I always recommend buying the cheapest one you can find.
Gotcha.
There's The high expensive stuff, I have not been able to find a difference.
Got you. So this is much like our bench flour. This is our bench olive oil. We're not making super salad dressing. We just need some oil.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. If you're doing something where the olive oil is the ingredient that you're trying to taste.
Yeah, you're highlighting. Yeah. Okay.
This is an additive to something else and not going to be the primary flavor.
Okay. Our dough ball is spinning. Most of it's attached to the dough hook now, looks like.
Yep, looks like it's mixing up, and it's probably a little more tacky. We're going to just for the sake of going through this process, you can feel it.
Yeah, you got a little touch here. Yeah, it almost like if you had removed a sticker, a price tag from something, and there's that leftover sticky feeling on the box. That's how it feels right about now.
That's exactly right.
And so now you reduce the speed a little bit on our mixer.
Yeah, now that we've got it mixed up good, I got it down on 1. I could have stayed at 2, but I liked the temperature of our water. The higher speed that we do it at, first of all, there's more friction. If we get too high of a speed, the dough is going to get overworked, and then it'll be tough.
Oh, okay.
So we want to try and do it on a slowish speed. Sometimes, I might go up to 3. It just depends on how things are forming and how it looks.
And when we say tough, is that because it's actually developed too much gluten? Okay.
Yeah, it's overworked.
Gotcha, it's overworked. Okay.
Mm-hmm. We're going to do a max mix of 12 minutes. From the time we started adding water, it was about a minute of adding water, then I hit a timer, and once we hit 5 minutes, we're going to add the fat.
Okay.
Then we're going to go 5-6 minutes after that until it feels like I want it to feel.
Now that time limit, does that vary by the type of pizza dough that you are making, or is that just a typical?
That's my speed, no matter what I'm making.
No kidding. Okay, 12 minutes.
Except gluten-free. That's good.
Except gluten-free. Okay, so if you're starting out as a home cook and you're doing any type of pizza dough, maybe 12 minutes is your target. You hit past that, and you're gonna have some overworked dough.
Yeah, I would say overworked starts happening at the 15-minute mark.
Okay, so you got a little wiggle room. Yeah. It's not like it's gonna destroy itself in 12 minutes. Okay.
Yeah, you start getting up much over 15 minutes, and depending on the speed you're running at, I think you start running into a situation where it's going to be overworked.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So we want, and we're gonna handle this dough again later when we stretch it out. So the more times you handle it, the more times it gets folded up and flipped and flopped and goes through this process, the tougher it gets. So
that makes sense.
All right, we're right at 5 minutes.
All right.
I like adding about a tablespoon per bag. I just know how this pours, so I'm doing it by eye, but.
It's a good bartender couple of shots.
That's
there
right,
out of the olive oil. Yeah.
And so now you'll see it kind of slide around in there.
Yeah, sliding. We've got a nice glistening coat of oil.
And I'm going to kick it up one more time. That'll help it get a little more grab.
Probably less friction to worry about now that we have a fat in there.
That's right. We got a little piece that broke off there. We'll see if it incorporates after a couple of minutes. It should. If it doesn't, we'll just get our hands in there and.
Oh yeah, we've got a. Good.
I think it'll grab.
I'll pick it up there.
Mm-hmm.
So if your dough ball shoots apart in your mixer bowl after you've added your olive oil, don't worry, you can still recover. And that's nice as we're talking through these things too, because with the exception of maybe killing your yeast or something like that, we have a lot of steps to recover if we've made an error.
Absolutely.
So just make some pizza is what we're saying.
Yeah, it's very forgiving.
Oh, you can smell that olive oil in there. Nice.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to grab the microphone for just a moment. We are actually going to kind of fast forward through the rest of the mixing process. Note that mixing dough by hand is also a lot of fun. It may be easier or more difficult depending on the hydration level and how much dough you are mixing, but there are certainly multiple methods to do so, but we're going to pick it up at the end of the mix. Here we go.
There's our timer.
Yeah, so we are at 11 minutes and 49 seconds.
Oh, we got a nice looking dough ball there.
Yeah, why don't you give that?
Yeah, let's get a little touch there. Gotcha. Yeah, still kind of has that same tackiness, and there's, again, almost nothing attached to my hand, and I'm certainly not pulling up any type of big strings as I press and release there.
Yep. Yep, that's exactly what we want. So we're going to get this out of here.
All right, I'm going to drop the dough hook. Bowl comes out of the KitchenAid.
Yep, and we'll just try and clean this dough hook off as best we can.
There it is. Oh, the dough hook is clean, almost. Yeah.
And we're going to take this whole batch and put it on our bench.
All right.
And just for kicks, let's see what the temp of our dough is.
Let's do the science here. The dough's 77 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah, so that's pretty good.
So our water when we started was right around 70 or so. So we actually came up.
Yep, that friction.
Yeah.
There's 78 there. So that's good. You know, I like 75 to 85, something like that, if it's going to be a same-day rise. So now I like to make all the dough balls the same size. Sure. We made 2 bags, so this is going to be 4 dough balls.
Okay.
So we're just going to weigh the whole thing.
Yeah, we got a nice little Nerf football of dough here.
Yep.
What do we got there?
1248.
1248 grams.
Yeah, we have 4 dough balls, so we're going to be 312 per, if my math is correct.
That was some quick math. That was Matt Frampton right there, everybody.
So we'll weigh these out. And this thing is called a dough cutter or a dough scraper.
It's a little stainless steel scraper, bench scraper.
Super helpful for this, as well as cleaning the bench off.
Oh yeah.
So we're at 311 there.
All right, so we're measuring out those dough balls.
Yeah.
And there comes the bench scraper again, just straight down into the dough and with a little forward movement to cut off your dough ball.
Yep.
And then on the scale, then you're just pulling off a little bit of dough there to get it all.
Yep, get it as close as we can. I mean, I'm being very particular right now. If I was 310 to 315, I'd be just fine with that.
Gotcha. We're just looking for equal portions here of the dough.
So this one is 313, and this last one should be like 311, 309.
There you go, 309. Okay.
So that's good. So now we've got 4 separate wads of dough. They're not dough balls yet.
That's true. Yes, they are not in ball form. They are very look like individual rocks there.
Yep.
Yes.
So we have a dough tray here. This is made by a company called Dough Mate.
Oh, okay.
To my knowledge, they're the only dough trays that work. So you visited with Wasoli, right?
I've talked to him at the restaurant.
Okay,
yes.
So he probably he has a lot of these in his
back
walk-in
in the cooler. Yeah.
And they're commercial size. Those won't fit in a refrigerator in your house. So I think this is the only company that makes residential refrigerator size, and they stack like this.
Oh yeah.
So I have 12 of them, and they hold 6 dough balls each.
So for those listening out there, so we've got what is essentially a kind of looks like a shorter dish pan, and about how high are those guys? About two?
Yeah, that's probably 3
inches high.
Yep.
And they had good lip edge on there, a little thicker, and they do. You've got a ton of them, so they do.
Yeah, and they're stackable. So
that's great.
Yeah, and so they stack like that.
So if you're doing a bunch of pizzas, you can stack them up in there. And
that's exactly right. And the way they stack, it keeps the dough from drying out.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yep. I'm just adding a little spray oil.
Yeah, a little cooking spray there.
Not really necessary, but it does help it release later.
Could you use olive oil if you didn't have?
You could, and you could just wipe some olive oil in there. Even here with the spray, there's probably a little too much in there. I don't want like an oil.
You don't want it wet. You're just enough so that you can easily get that dough ball back out of there.
That's exactly right.
Okay. All right. So we have a nicely spritzed pan.
Yep. I'm going to do one, and then I want you to do at least one.
Great.
So 2 ways to do this. The easiest way is to pick it up.
Okay.
And we're going to, first of all, this feels perfect.
All right. So I'm going to grab me a dough ball here.
Yeah, this is exactly how I want it to feel.
Okay.
We're going to fold it and turn it 90 degrees.
Okay, so I'm going to take this dough ball and I'm going to...
Away from your body.
I'm going to go away from my body, fold it in half.
Yep, without stretching it.
Without stretching, so just very
gently. Just folding it.
Okay.
Turn it 90 degrees.
And am I pulling my fingers in as I go?
Sort of. Can you see what I'm doing here? I'm just... Okay. What I'm trying to do is trap air.
Okay, so fold in half. Almost, if anybody's ever made a... silly putty bubble where you fold it over it and you make it pop. That's sort of what we're doing.
Yeah, that's a lot like that.
Okay, and then turn 90 degrees
and keep it. So see how I just folded that?
Okay.
Now I'm going to turn it 90 degrees, and I'm going to do this 9 or 10 times tops.
And then we're taking the seam that I made that was horizontal, making it vertical, or the other way around actually here.
Yep.
Vertical to horizontal, making a vertical fold away from my body.
Yep.
90 degree.
And then when you get like 8, 9 in, gently flip it over. We want to try and keep it nice and round, and we're going to close up the bottom like this.
Okay, so I am, and the outside, as I'm doing this, our rock is now turning into a very nice ball.
Yep.
Okay.
And you're doing a perfect job, by the way.
Oh, well, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. All right, and so I think I'm probably about 8 or 9 in.
You're good.
And then so
now you're going to just kind of take this and close it up.
Okay, so I'm just literally pinching that seam.
Try and keep it round instead of oval.
All right, let me do one more fold so maybe I can.
Go. There it is.
There we go. And pinch quickly because the dough is.
And you can go like this too. Let me show you.
Sure, yeah, please.
Like this.
Oh, big pinch all the way from the edge, and we're doing a little tiny twist.
Yep, just like that.
Got it. Okay. Well,
and
now it's a dough ball.
Now it's a dough ball.
Okay.
Let's do one more.
We got to each do one more.
But I'll show you a different way you can do it.
Please.
So you can take your hands like this, and
that's an interesting motion.
You're basically tucking it and turning it at the same time.
So I have both hands curled.
Yep.
And then are you tucking with your right hand?
Both, actually.
Oh, okay. So you're kind of pushing.
I'm tucking and lifting. Letting go, tucking and lifting, letting go.
That is an interesting motion. So
this actually makes a better looking dough ball. But if you're doing like 60 of these, see how round that is?
That is, oh wow, that is like baseball round.
Yeah. So you're good. Get to where you have some more space.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to take this, if I can describe. So I got the ball on the bench. My hands are in a semicircle. I'm going to grab the dough ball from the side.
Go a little bit higher.
A little bit higher even. Okay.
Yeah. And then tuck and turn. Then set it down.
Okay.
Do it again. There you go.
So I'm pressing it under itself a little bit.
Yeah.
That is an interesting.
You're just barely above the surface of the table.
Okay, so I'm not resting my hands on the surface. I'm actually lifting and then pressing down as I go.
Yeah, so, doing 70 of these can be a little taxing on your hands.
Yeah.
So that's why I like the other method. But
so if you're at Virtuoso or any other local pizzeria, be thankful for the person that's there with 100 dough balls.
Yeah, balling up dough, man.
Oh my goodness,
that's all the labor.
Oh, this is very interesting. So as I move through, and I'm actually, I'm kind of impressed with myself here because it looks really smooth and nice. Now, do you still have to pinch the bottom?
You just did both and all in one, so now it goes in here.
Okay, so is that looking good?
That's perfect.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Yep. And set in there, and I just kind of set these, just spreading them out as much as I can. If I had 6, I'd go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
So we're giving them a little space. We've got them in a staggered formation, and now a little cooking spray on the top of the dough ball.
Yeah.
And again, I'm guessing you could use olive oil.
Yeah, I just grabbed what I had right here.
Sure.
I think I have olive oil spray upstairs, but.
And so after all that too, we were talking about tackiness and whatnot. My hands are clean. Like
yeah, just a little bit of residue.
Yeah.
Which you can rinse off real quick, and then. That's just going to sit there and rise.
Okay.
And we're ready to cook some pizza.
All right. Awesome. So we've got the dough balls that we just made. So you put another dough pan on top. So it's covered.
Yeah.
And so if you didn't have a dough pan with like a tea towel or something like that work?
I'm not a big fan of towels. I would use, so you can use a bowl with a lid with just a little pinhole in it so gas can escape. Okay.
So you don't want it to seal 100%, but you want it mostly covered. And then, gotcha. Wow.
So that's Neapolitan that we're going to cook.
Wow. Okay. So he just revealed the pan below the one we just did, and those dough balls grew. My goodness. There they are. Awesome.
Yeah, that one's that's a deep dish one. I'm just going to show you how to stretch in the pan.
Great. Okay.
But we'll cook the other ones.
All right. Sounds good.
This is the end of part 1 of essentially pizza making class with me, Dave Zorko of Saturday Omaha, the student, and Matt Frampton of Urban Slicer, the teacher. Also, I've kind of dubbed him my pizza coach. He really was the first person to impart all of that knowledge to me and part of the journey that I have set off on. But hopefully you're gathering knowledge from this as well. Don't worry, there will be a part 2 that is focused more on the cooking portion of things and also the topping portion of things and the delicious part of eating things. Yes. And we made varying types of pizza from a deep dish. I actually got the opportunity to cook on a very, very hot oven there that cooks a pizza in about 90 seconds. Pretty crazy. Definitely hotter than most folks' home ovens that are out there. Thank you so much for listening. I truly hope that you got some information out of this. Maybe learned something. Maybe this has inspired you to also set off on your pizza journey. I did mention too the book, The Elements of Pizza by Ken Forkish. I think it's a great read and really kind of put some things together. Also give you a few different techniques we did not discuss today. And learning from various people and various sources is a great thing. Multiple mentors is good. So once again, thank you for being with us on this episode with Saturday Omaha. And as I say, until we eat again, stay hungry and stay motivated and go cook something. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.
Our show is recorded and produced by Saturday Omaha. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, as well as email SaturdayOmaha@gmail.com. Thanks for listening and stay hungry.
Saturday Omaha.
Eat this.